Hey, this is Mrs. Reichel, and welcome to second semester. So this next chapter covers chapter 7 and 8. You'll notice that this semester we're going to start combining a bunch of chapters together, and so if you've been really used to reading the book, that's great. But we're going to start kind of brushing over the most important stuff and then moving to other stuff a little bit more quickly. Chapter 7, we're basically going to do the entire chapter, and then chapter 8, it's going to be sort of just a little tiny, little snippets of each part of the chapter. So, let's start off with some changes that have been made to the study guide. So if you look on the very first page, so page 1 of the study guide, about halfway down the page, so if you have your regular study guide, everything should look the same. There's the objectives, 1 through 17 or whatever, and then always at the middle kind of part of the study guide, it says, normally it says, I'm spelling things wrong. It says, write the objectives on a separate sheet of paper. Well, I kind of decided to move things around a little bit, and so now you'll see that it says highlight each of the objectives. Also, within your study guide itself, I've left a lot of space on each page for you to write your notes directly in your study guide. Some of you are not going to like this, especially those of you that write really big and that sort of thing, so I apologize for those of you that this is going to affect. If you don't want to write your notes this way, then don't. Write them on a separate sheet of paper and just business as usual. If you feel like you write pretty small or you don't like looking at different things, as far as you don't like to switch back and forth between your notes and your study guide, this will be great for you. So we're going to try it out and see how it works out. So that's the only change to the study guide. Is that the highlighting now is taking place, and you have room in your study guide to actually go through and draw things and write in your notes that way. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So, in your study guide, I am on the second page, so not that first title page where your name goes, but the second page. Number 1 says structural classification of nervous system. So you should see sort of a flow chart. In the first box, the one at the very top, I'd like you to write the nervous system. So this chapter is all about the nervous system, and the nervous system is the master control center. And that means that it's in charge of 3 major things. So the first one is sensory input. The second is that it's an integrator. And the third is that it deals with motor outputs. So we're again in number 1, the top box, the very first one. So sensory input really means that the nervous system has a job of gathering information. So it gathers information. The integration part means that it's going to process and interpret information. And then the motor output really deals with the response. So the nervous system is the master control center, and these are the 3 major jobs of that. Okay, so we're still in number 1, but I'm moving on to the second. Whoops, I have to go back actually. Okay, so now we're still in the number 1 of your study guide, except for, so I'm going to kind of draw a little picture. We filled in the nervous system one, then it goes over here, and then that branches over here. We're going to do the one on the right first. Okay, so this is the central nervous system. So basically the nervous system is broken down into 2 sections. The first one, or the one that's on the right, is called the central nervous system. And this includes your brain and spinal cord. Okay, so next up we're going to move into the one on the left. Okay, so it's the second box down on the left. So let's see here. Okay, so next up we have the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, sometimes we say, is the PNS. Same with the central nervous system. Whoops, I'm US, that should be, sometimes we say is the CNS. But the peripheral nervous system deals with the nerves outside of the brain and spinal cord. Okay, so this includes the spinal nerves and cranial nerves as well. Okay, so within the peripheral nervous system, you'll see that the peripheral nervous system branches off two ways. Okay, so the first one that we're going to write down, which I'll erase this is going to be the one on the left. So from this box, the one on the left, we're going to say that this is the somatic division. Okay, so this is a division. So if this was the PNS, you have one box that goes this way, and then you have the other box that goes this way. We're talking about the one on the left. Okay, this is the somatic nervous system. Somatic means that it's voluntary. This includes skeletal muscles, and sometimes this is referred to as the afferent pathway or the sensory pathway. Okay, and then we have the autonomic nervous system. So this is the somatic nervous system. Then I'm going to erase this, and now we're going to move on to this next box, so the one that's directly to the right of the somatic nervous system. So this is the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system, to me, auto means self. Autonomic to me kind of sounds like automatic, means that this automatically happens or it's involuntary. So this includes things like the cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. All of those are part of the autonomic nervous system, the involuntary one. Sometimes these are referred to as being the motor or the efferent pathways. And then the last part, we have the divisions of the autonomic nervous system. So this is, if we have our autonomic, it goes into two different categories. So it doesn't matter where you write things, but first up we're going to go through the parasympathetic. So the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic is known as your resting and digesting and elimination system. So this is going to be where you're calm, you're resting, your food is digesting, your bowels are moving, that sort of thing. Okay, so that's your parasympathetic nervous system. And then we have the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so the sympathetic nervous system is also known as your fight or flight response. And this one's going to be, sometimes we call it the 3 E's. Those E's stand for exercise, emergency, or excitement. Okay, so we have the 3 E's, exercise, emergency, and excitement. The sympathetic is the fight or flight. This is when we have elevated heart rate. So I'm just going to write heart rate. We have elevated blood pressure, elevated glucose levels, whereas the opposite occurs in the parasympathetic. So in the parasympathetic, we're going to have a lower heart rate, lower blood pressure, and lower glucose levels. Okay, so they're kind of the opposite of each other, and they act opposite of each other too. So we're going to go ahead and stop there, and I hope you found that helpful, and I hope that you like the new adjustment to the study guide.